The station hung in silence at the edge of the Andara sector, a place where few travelers dared to linger. Most ships passed by, drawn toward richer worlds or busier trade hubs. But the human envoy, Elia's Corps, had been sent here for a simple task: repair the failing archive wing and ensure the old records remained intact. To most, it seemed unimportant, but for him, it was an opportunity. He had always been curious about the forgotten corners of the galaxy, where dust and time held secrets no one wanted to remember. The station itself was a long chain of metallic halls, humming faintly with life support and distant machinery. The walls bore the marks of decades, a tapestry of scratches and dents from careless maintenance and hurried work. Elias moved quietly, his boots making little sound on the polished floor. He had grown used to solitude, and the silence of this place suited him well. It allowed his thoughts to wander, to imagine the civilizations that had built the machines he now repaired. As he rounded a corner toward the archive wing, a figure stepped into the hall. She was standing perfectly still, as if she had always belonged there. Elias blinked. She wore simple clothes, a muted gray that seemed to absorb the dim light. Her hair was black and straight, falling to her shoulders, and her eyes were dark and piercing. There was nothing in her appearance that screamed importance. Yet there was something about her presence, an unspoken weight that made Elias pause. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice steady and calm. "Do you recognize me?" Then she smiled faintly, a smile that was calm, not mocking. "That is a safe answer," she said. "Most would claim recognition out of fear. You do not." "It usually gets me in trouble. Or maybe it is just my nature. Records tell stories that others do not care to hear." She smiled again, faintly, as though amused by his guess. "Among others, but humans are different. You endure and yet you adapt. You bend, but you do not break. That is rare." Somehow, telling a stranger, even one who seemed strangely knowledgeable, about the resilience of humanity felt like revealing a secret he wasn't supposed to share. The woman stepped closer. She examined the walls, touching the metal lightly with her fingers, as if she could read the history embedded in the scratches and dents. "I came to see this place," she said softly. "I wanted to see what remains when the world moves on." Her eyes returned to him. "Most would fear discovery, most would demand control. You simply exist." There was a quiet authority in her presence that made questions feel small, unnecessary. "I am Elia's Corps," he said finally. "I work here maintaining the records, that is all." Most would take this place and claim it theirs. She turned back to him, and her voice dropped slightly, almost a whisper. "Tell me, human, do you understand what is happening in the galaxy right now? But mostly I focus on what I can touch, what I can fix. Because the past speaks truths that the present ignores, and because you are one of the few who listens." She paused, looking past him toward the archive doors. "Here lies a record that may change the future. It is hidden, overlooked, as all dangerous truths are. I needed to see who would notice." He had always loved records, but he had never imagined they might carry power, not just knowledge. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," he admitted. "Readiness is often a matter of perspective," she said softly. "Some are ready because they do not know the danger they carry, others because they understand it too well. You human are ready in the right way." The air smelled faintly of ozone and dust. She stopped in front of a section of old human records, picking up a thin metallic disc. She held it carefully, examining it as if it were fragile. "These records," she said softly, "tell of a species underestimated by the galaxy. You have been underestimated, Elia's Corps, and yet you endure. Humans, we survive. That is why I speak with you. And yet here I am unseen, because the galaxy believes I am untouchable, distant, unapproachable. But I wanted to see humanity, Elia's Corps. I wanted to see the truth for myself. More than anyone I know. And perhaps in doing so, I will learn something I have never known before." And somehow he understood that the galaxy would never be the same after this moment. Finally, she turned and walked toward the exit, her steps quiet but confident. Elias followed, his mind racing with questions he dared not ask aloud. Who was she really? Why had she come in secret? And what did she hope to find in a human who fixed old records in a forgotten station? As the station lights flickered above them, Elias understood one thing clearly. The galaxy had hidden truths, and humanity, small and underestimated, was about to become part of a story far larger than he had ever imagined. And somewhere in the shadows of the quiet hall, a question lingered, one he could not answer yet. Who is she really, and why does she care about humanity? The moment she revealed herself as someone extraordinary, Elias felt a shiver run through him. He had followed her through the quiet corridors of the station, and now, in a chamber lined with holographic consoles and flickering screens, he finally understood the weight of her presence. She did not wear the markings of royalty, nor the uniforms of a military leader. Yet her posture, her calm, her quiet command of the space made it clear she carried authority that few could challenge. "My apologies for the secrecy," she said, her voice calm but carrying authority. "I should not have approached you without explanation. But I wanted to see humanity through its own eyes, not filtered through reports or second-hand accounts." Her gaze rested on him, sharp and assessing. "Most humans I meet speak proudly of their victories or clever strategies. You speak humbly. That is unusual." "That is all." He hesitated, then added, "I do not understand why you are here. You have power, authority. Why would you care about a human at a small station at the edge of the galaxy? Some who wield it think it shapes the galaxy. But real strength is measured by how one acts when no one is watching, when no one expects anything from you. That is why I am here. I am seeking truth, and I suspect you can show it to me." He had never thought of himself as someone who could teach a ruler anything. He had spent his life tending to records, machines, and small repairs. And yet, standing here, facing someone whose presence could influence worlds, he felt a quiet confidence. Perhaps humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because others failed to notice what they could endure. She moved closer, her gaze shifting to the holographic screens that displayed star maps and historical data. "Tell me," she said, "what do you know of your species? How would you describe humanity to someone who has never met it?" "We survive disasters, wars, disease, and the mistakes of those before us. We make errors, we fall, but we rise again. We are curious, we are stubborn, and we value life, even when it seems illogical to do so. That is what I know. But humans, you measure it by endurance, by resilience. That is why you are dangerous, Elias Core. Not because you seek to conquer, but because you cannot be broken so easily." I do not seek to break anyone," he said quietly. We survive, that is all." "Threats from what, who?" "And yet I came here alone, without guards or titles. I wanted to see the truth." It was vast, feared across multiple sectors, and powerful enough to crush worlds. And here she was, standing quietly before him, as ordinary as any human walking the station halls. His first instinct was to bow. It was a reflex he could not control. He bowed deeply, his hand touching the floor, his head lowered. She looked at him in surprise. "Most species bow out of fear," she said softly. "Few do it out of respect or understanding. Few do it with honesty. You do not underestimate yourself, and you do not overestimate me. That balance is rare. Surely your people, your empire, would demand your presence elsewhere. Forces are moving that my empire cannot contain, and most rulers will not even notice them. But humans may be the key. That is why I am here, to learn from you, to see the truth of your species firsthand." I do not know if I can show you all of that," he said quietly. "I am only one human. You, Elias Core, are one such human." The Queen turned away, her eyes scanning the archive shelves. "These records," she said, "hold truths that few understand. They tell of human courage, ingenuity, and endurance. They tell of mistakes, yes, but also of wisdom gained through failure. That is why I am here, to see if these stories still live in your people, in your minds, in your hearts. Because those who hold power wish to shape history to their advantage, and because the truth often comes from unexpected places." She turned to him, her eyes locking with his. "That is why I came here, not as a queen with soldiers, not as a ruler with demands, but as a seeker of truth. And you, human, are the one who may show it to me." And yet, standing before the most powerful ruler he had ever encountered, he realized that humanity had a strength the galaxy often overlooked, and that he, in his small way, had a role to play in revealing it. The Queen turned toward the exit, her movement calm and deliberate. Elias followed, matching her pace. As they walked through the silent halls of the station, he felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. Something significant was beginning, something that would reach far beyond this quiet outpost. And somehow, he understood that humanity, small and underestimated, was about to face challenges that would test its endurance, its ingenuity, and its very identity. Finally, they reached a large observation deck overlooking the empty void of space. Stars stretched endlessly, distant and cold, yet filled with possibility. The queen gazed out at them, silent for a long moment, then spoke. The galaxy is larger than any ruler can control. And yet it will always be shaped by those who endure, those who adapt, those who see clearly when others are blinded by fear or ambition. That is why humans matter, Elia's core. That is why you matter. And he, in his small way, was about to witness, and perhaps guide, the first steps of something far greater than he had ever imagined. Elias could not sleep that night. The station was quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery and the occasional hiss of air vents. Yet the encounter with the queen weighed heavily on his mind. He replayed her words over and over. Humans endure, humans adapt, humans matter more than the galaxy realized. It was flattering, yes, but it was also a responsibility he had not asked for. He felt small in the vastness of space, a single human in a galaxy of thousands of civilizations. And yet the Queen's presence had reminded him that even one human could make a difference. Morning came slowly. Elias moved through the archive wing, checking systems and ensuring the delicate records were intact. Yet his thoughts were not on his work. They were on her, on the calm authority she carried, and on the warning she had hinted at. A threat was coming, something the galaxy could not see, something only humans might be ready for. He did not have long to ponder. The Queen returned that morning, alone again, as if her brief disappearance had been a dream. This time she did not ask questions. Instead, she spoke with purpose. "You understand humanity, Elias," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "You see its endurance, its ingenuity, but do you understand why others fail to see it? They underestimate us, I think. They do not realize what humans are capable of until it is too late. That is what humans possess, and it is why I came here. You need honesty, courage, and insight. You have those qualities, Elias. That is why I chose to speak with you." Yet here was a being, a queen, telling him that his understanding of humanity, his perspective, was valuable. The queen led him to a large observation deck, the same one he had visited the day before. From here, the galaxy stretched out endlessly. Stars, distant and cold, blinked in patterns he had memorized from the station's charts, yet there was a new awareness in Elias' mind. The stars were not just points of light. They were potential threats, potential allies, potential stories waiting to be written. "The galaxy is changing," the Queen said softly. "Civilizations rise and fall, empires expand and collapse, technology advances faster than understanding, and in this chaos some species survive and some are lost. Humans, you have survived when many others have not. That is not luck, that is strategy, resilience, and insight. Humans survive without losing themselves. That is a dangerous combination." The Queen turned her gaze toward the station, her eyes scanning the walls and corridors as if seeing more than just the metal and lights. "I have observed many civilizations," she said quietly. "I have seen them rise with power and fall to arrogance. I have seen species that relied on fleets and armies only to be destroyed by forces they could not control. Humans are rare. You do not seek domination, and yet the galaxy fears what you represent. You are a species of balance. Most species do not. They act out of fear, ambition, or pride. Humans act out of necessity, morality, and foresight. That is why you have survived when others have fallen, and that is why I have come. The galaxy is facing a threat that will not respect borders, empires, or fleets. Only humans, only you may be able to respond in time." He had always known the galaxy was dangerous, that humans were not alone, that civilizations beyond Earth were far older and more advanced. But this was different. She spoke of a threat unseen, unstoppable, approaching quietly while others remained blind. And somehow humans were the key. Elias felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had spent his life repairing records, preserving knowledge, living quietly. He had never imagined he, or humanity, could matter on such a scale. Yet the Queen's presence made it real. She gestured toward the holographic displays lining the observation deck. "Look at the records, Elias. Look at what humanity has endured. Wars that nearly destroyed your species, plagues that took millions, catastrophes that erased entire settlements. And yet you survived, you rebuilt, you adapted, you learned. That is the proof of what I have been saying." Images of old Earth disasters, interstellar conflicts, colonization efforts, and near-extinction events flashed across the screens. Yet in every story, humans rose again. They learned, they endured, they survived. "These stories," Elias said quietly, "they show how humans survive, yes, but also how fragile we are. One wrong decision, one overlooked threat, and we could fail." "Exactly. That is why you are needed. Not to dominate, not to lead by force, but to guide by understanding. Humanity's strength lies not in fleets or armies, but in foresight, endurance, and moral courage. The galaxy underestimates you, and that is your advantage. He understood now that humans had survived not because of strength alone, but because of wisdom, patience, and adaptability. And now, the galaxy was moving toward a moment where those qualities would be tested like never before. The Queen's expression softened, though her eyes remained sharp. You may wonder why I, the ruler of millions, would come alone to a small station. The answer is simple. I do not need soldiers to see truth. I do not need advisors to tell me what I should already know. I came here to see humans as they truly are, unfiltered, honest, and resilient. And you, Elias, represent that truth. Know what you can endure and what you can change. Second, prepare for the coming threat. It will not wait for empires to organize. It will not negotiate or hesitate. It will act, and only those who understand survival will withstand it. And third, she turned to him, her eyes meeting his. Third, teach others. Humans are not meant to act alone. Your species can guide, inspire, and lead, not by domination, but by example. That is why you matter, Elia's core. That is why humanity matters. Their endurance, their ingenuity, their ability to survive when others would fail. These were qualities that could not be measured by fleets or weapons. And he would do whatever he could to ensure that humanity was ready. The Queen's presence lingered long after she left the observation deck. Elias returned to his work, tending to records and repairing machines, but his mind was no longer focused only on the past. He thought of the future, the galaxy's unseen dangers, humanity's potential, and the role he might play in guiding his species through what was to come. For the first time in his life, Elias understood that humans were not simply survivors. They were a force shaped by history, by endurance, and by the choices they had made. And now they would be tested as never before. As night fell again over the quiet station, Elias looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, unseen forces were moving, preparing for a moment that only humans might be ready to face. And somewhere else, the Queen was watching, waiting, and trusting that humanity's resilience would rise to meet the challenge. Elias knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy had underestimated humans for far too long. And when the time came, they would prove without question that endurance, intelligence, and courage were more powerful than any empire, weapon, or ruler. And in that moment, the future began to take shape, not with fire and conquest, but with quiet strength, steady minds, and the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to be broken. Elias awoke to the quiet hum of the station, but sleep had not stayed with him. His mind was filled with thoughts of the Queen and her words. He had repaired countless machines and preserved hundreds of records, but never had he imagined that a single human could hold such significance in the galaxy. She had called humans resilient, dangerous in ways others could not understand, and he could not shake the weight of those words. He walked slowly through the archive hall, running his fingers along the cold metal shelves. Each row of data disks, each neatly stacked record told stories of humanity's past, the triumphs and the failures, the disasters and the recoveries. Humans had survived near-extinction events, wars, plagues, and colonization disasters, and each time they had risen again. Elias had always known these stories, but the Queen's visit made them feel different. They were no longer just history. They were proof of a power the galaxy had ignored. She appeared again in the central hall, moving quietly as if she had always belonged there. Elias felt his chest tighten. Her presence carried authority, but it was not fearsome. It was calm, deliberate, and quiet. She spoke without announcement, yet every word felt precise, weighted, and important. Elias Core, she said, her eyes meeting his. Do you understand why I have come here? I wanted to see how a single human reacts without expectation or fear, how humans endure without pretense. Most species respond to power. They obey, they fear, they lie. Humans act from honesty and instinct, and that is why I am here. One human can show the galaxy what it has ignored. You endure, you observe, you act honestly. That is rare. You speak of humanity as if we are more than we seem, he said. We have survived, yes, but we are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced. Why would that matter to you? But only species that endure, that adapt, that learn from history without repeating the same mistakes survive. Humans possess this. You are dangerous not because you conquer, but because you endure when others fail. And yet humans had survived each time. They had rebuilt, adapted, and continued. We survive, he said softly. That is all we know how to do. That is why you matter now more than ever." She turned and gestured toward the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly, cold and distant. "Look at the galaxy, Elias. Entire civilizations rise and fall without notice. Empires crumble because they miscalculate, because they fail to see consequences, because they act out of arrogance. Humanity has survived because it learns, adapts, and endures. You may not be the strongest, but you are the wisest in ways the galaxy cannot measure. Now humans must understand themselves. The galaxy is changing. Threats are moving unseen, and most species are blind to them. Only humans have the patience, adaptability, and foresight to respond. I came here not to command, not to demand loyalty, but to observe, to see if humans are ready, to see if you understand the value of endurance." Elias felt a mix of awe and fear. Humans had survived countless trials, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He realized that his species was not just enduring, but preparing quietly without spectacle for a future that others could not even see. "Tell me," she said after a pause, "do humans realize their potential? Do they understand what they are capable of? You do not act without thought. You understand consequences because you live with them, because you cannot escape them. That is rare, that is strength." And somehow humans were the key. "You are needed, Elias," she said softly. "Not as a soldier, not as a ruler, but as an example. Humanity can guide, inspire, and endure when others fail. And you, as one human, can embody that. By observing, by learning, by showing others how to endure. Humans have always been underestimated. That is your advantage. Most species respond with force. Humans respond with insight. You survive, adapt, and act. That is more powerful than fleets or weapons." Humans had always risen again. They had survived not because of strength, but because of foresight, ingenuity, and resilience. Perhaps the Queen was right. Perhaps that was the power no one else had seen. She gestured toward the holographic displays. Images of human history appeared, old Earth colonies, interstellar conflicts, and near catastrophes. Elias saw the failures, the mistakes, the disasters. And yet he also saw recovery, learning, and growth. Humans endured because they remembered, because they adapted, because they chose to continue. "These stories," he said quietly, "show how fragile we are, but also how resilient. We survive, yes, but only because we learn from our mistakes. And that is why the galaxy fears what it does not understand. Humans survive when others fail. Humans endure when others fall. That is why you are needed. That is why your species is essential now." For the first time, he saw humans not as ordinary survivors, but as a species with a hidden power, one measured not in ships or weapons, but in resilience, intelligence, and foresight. And he understood that his role, small though it might seem, was part of a larger story, a story the galaxy had not yet noticed, a story that could shape the future. The Queen turned to him, her voice calm but firm. "Remember this, Elias Core, endurance is more powerful than force. Insight is more dangerous than conquest. Humanity will be tested as never before, and only those who understand their strength will prevail. That is why I am here. That is why I came to see a human. That is why you matter. I will do what I can." Somewhere beyond the reaches of the station, threats moved, unseen and powerful, yet he felt a quiet confidence. Humanity had survived countless trials, and this too could be endured. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that was their advantage. They survived when others fell. They adapted when others failed, and they endured when the galaxy thought them weak. And in that moment, Elias Core understood something profound. The galaxy had misjudged humanity for far too long. And when the time came, humans would prove that endurance, wisdom, and courage were more powerful than any weapon, fleet, or empire. He felt the weight of responsibility, but he also felt hope. For the first time, he saw humans not as ordinary survivors, but as a force that could shape the future. And somewhere beyond the stars, the Queen watched, waiting, trusting that humanity's resilience would rise to meet the challenge. The galaxy was quiet now, but it was not peaceful. Across countless systems, ships moved with precision, fleets of humans and their allies preparing for a threat that had come without warning. The enemy was unlike any force humanity had faced before. It did not attack in waves or declare war. It advanced silently, consuming systems with a strange, unstoppable energy, dismantling infrastructure and knowledge with efficiency that terrified even the most advanced civilizations. Elias Core stood on the bridge of the central human command vessel, the stars outside stretching endlessly. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Endurance is more powerful than force. Insight is more dangerous than conquest. Humanity will be tested as never before. The time for observation and reflection was over. Now was the time to act. The human fleets had moved carefully, positioning themselves across key sectors, establishing communication and defensive grids that were not meant to attack but to adapt. Humanity did not rely on overwhelming firepower alone. They relied on foresight, coordination, and ingenuity, qualities that the galaxy often underestimated. The Queen's ship appeared alongside the human flagship. She had chosen to travel directly with Elias, not as a ruler issuing commands, but as an observer seeking to understand humanity's approach. Her presence brought calm to the bridge, yet it also reminded all who served that the stakes were higher than they could measure. Elias turned to her. "We have prepared as best we can, but this enemy is unlike anything the galaxy has seen. That is why you are capable of facing this." They created redundancies, adapting quickly to each unexpected strike. Their strength lay not in fleets or weapons, but in flexibility and understanding. The first encounter came in the outer sectors of the Andara cluster. A human command ship had detected the enemy's advance before any other species. Unlike conventional attacks, the enemy did not fire lasers or missiles. Instead, it emitted pulses that disabled technology, dismantled shields, and corrupted data systems. Humans were the first to understand that conventional weapons would fail. Elias watched as human engineers rerouted energy through redundant circuits, created makeshift shields, and stabilized nearby systems. Within hours, what other species had considered lost was salvaged and strengthened. The Queen observed silently, her eyes following every move, noting the ingenuity and patience of humans. "This is remarkable," she said quietly to Elias. "Other species would panic, attack blindly, or retreat. Humans endure, adapt, and protect what matters. We learn and then we act. This is why I came, Elias. This is why humans matter. You do not fight to conquer, you fight to survive. And by surviving, you shape the galaxy in ways others cannot." Each time it consumed a system, humans stabilized nearby sectors and rerouted resources, effectively containing the spread. They did not destroy for victory, they preserved for survival. Elias received messages from the fleets. Engineers, scientists, and commanders reported that humans had repaired systems others had abandoned, evacuated civilians under impossible conditions, and coordinated allies who had lost hope. They had acted without fear, without arrogance, and with precision that the galaxy had never witnessed. The Queen watched, her expression unreadable, but her eyes reflected awe. "Most species would have failed by now," she said softly. "Humans endure where others break, you act where others panic, you survive where others would fall." They adjusted, learned, and continued. That was their true power. The final confrontation came near the heart of the Andara cluster. The enemy advanced toward a densely populated human sector, threatening not only ships and colonies, but the knowledge and infrastructure humanity had preserved for centuries. Every species in the galaxy watched, expecting chaos, failure, and panic. But humans did not panic. They implemented a plan that relied not on brute force, but on coordination, foresight, and adaptability. Fleets were positioned to guide the enemy's pulses away from inhabited systems. Redundant circuits rerouted critical power to maintain stability. Engineers and scientists improvised solutions in real time, stabilizing failing systems and predicting the enemy's next move. Elias coordinated from the flagship, communicating with commanders across multiple sectors. He issued instructions calmly, logically, and clearly. The Queen stood beside him, silent but observant. Humans were not just responding, they were anticipating, shaping, and guiding. Hours passed. Systems that should have fallen remained intact. Fleets that should have scattered held position. And finally, as the enemy reached the cluster's outer boundary, human strategy forced it to retreat. It did not surrender, it had not expected to fail. But it could not break humans who endured, adapted, and acted with insight. The Queen's voice broke the silence on the flagship. "Remarkable," she said softly. "I have ruled empires for centuries, Elias, and I have never seen strategy, patience, and endurance applied with such precision. Humans have not only survived, they have guided the galaxy without conquering it. That is their power." The threat had retreated, though it remained a mystery. Humanity had not destroyed it. They had contained it, stabilized systems, and preserved knowledge. Across the galaxy, news of human endurance spread. Allies and former skeptics now saw humans not as minor participants in galactic affairs, but as a species to respect, learn from, and rely upon. The Queen requested a private audience with Elias once more. They met on the observation deck overlooking the endless stars. She did not sit in ceremony. She did not demand accolades. She merely observed, quiet and contemplative. "You have done what I hoped humanity could," she said softly. "You have endured, adapted, and guided without arrogance or force. That is rare. That is dangerous. That is why the galaxy must recognize your species for what it is. You survive not by breaking others, but by understanding what must be preserved. That is why the galaxy will now remember you." The Queen looked at him once more. "Do you recognize me now?" she asked quietly, a small smile on her lips. Elias studied her for a long moment. He remembered her arrival at the station, the way she had questioned him, the calm authority she carried. And now he saw her not just as a queen, but as someone who had witnessed humanity's true power firsthand. "I recognize you," he said finally. "Not as a ruler, but as someone who understood what humans could be and trusted us to endure. That is why I bow, not to titles, but to vision and to understanding. And now the galaxy must recognize it too." And they had guided without conquest, proving that a species underestimated by the galaxy could shape its fate in ways that no one had imagined. Elias turned back to the command deck, the hum of the station beneath his feet. The Queen's presence remained beside him, quiet, observant, but no longer just a visitor. She was a witness to humanity's hidden strength, a reminder that endurance, wisdom, and moral courage were powers the galaxy had often overlooked. And somewhere, beyond the reaches of known space, the galaxy began to change. Civilizations who had ignored humanity before now watched closely. They saw not weapons, not fleets, but the quiet power of a species that endured, adapted, and acted with wisdom. They saw humans not as minor players, but as essential participants in the shaping of the galaxy's future. Elias Core understood at last that humanity had been underestimated for far too long. And when the time came, humans would prove without question that endurance, intelligence, and courage were stronger than any empire, stronger than any weapon, stronger than fear itself. The Queen placed a hand on his shoulder. "The galaxy is vast, Elias. Threats will continue, challenges will arise, and yet humans will endure. Remember this always. Lead not with conquest, but with understanding. Survive not with aggression, but with insight. That is your strength. That is humanity's strength. And it will be a story worth remembering." The stars stretched on, endless and full of possibilities, and humanity, small and underestimated, began a new chapter, one that would shape the future of the galaxy in ways no one had anticipated.